Sox in the basement.
I want to say that my favorite part of the entire weekend here in Chicago was not only the Bears winning that game against the Packers, but just the whining from Packers fans after Bears fans and Bears players and Ben Johnson talk crap. I mean, I understand there's White Sox fans out there right now, Ed, who listen to Sox in the Basement, who are also Packers fans. Like, I get that. There are Packer fans who happen to be White Sox fans. That's a normal thing. So if you're a Packers fan, I understand it's not your entire fan base. But, you know, if Aaron Rodgers can talk about how he bleeping owns somebody, I think it's okay for Ben Johnson to be like, I bleeping hate that team. And if their coach can give a lazy, unprofessional handshake when the Bears lose to them the first game of this 3-game set that they played this year, I think Ben Johnson can shake his hand back in the same disrespectful manner. And I love rivalries. I love the whole thing. I don't get the crying after. Like, if you get beat, you get beat. You know? Like, I never got that. When I was a little kid in school, and the White Sox would play the Cubs that once-a-year game that didn't really count. You know, they'd have
the original Crosstown Classic. It was basically just to sell extra Tribune copies because they'd put an extra sports section in on it.
Right, exactly. When I was a kid and that would happen, of course, even on the South Side, there were kids wearing Cubs stuff to school over at St. Dennis. What were we at? 83rd and St. Louis. I went to St. Dennis Grammar School. And there'd be some trash talk. But when the Sox lost, I kept my mouth shut. You know? When somebody's got a good point about how they beat you, you go, okay, they beat me. And when the Sox won, I talk trash back. That's what a rivalry is. That's the beauty of rivalries. I love the fact that it's a rivalry. It hasn't been a rivalry for a long time because we've been terrible. That's the thing that also makes it really funny. I mean, Bears fans have been able to take abuse for like a decade and a half, if not more, in this so-called rivalry. They take 2 out of 3. They talk a little trash. They grate a little cheese. Suddenly we're poor sports. But again, Aaron Rodgers talking crap and all the Packers fans and all of Packer Nation, they have a song where even after they lose a game, because I've seen video of it, even after they lose a game, Packers fans will be up there drinking their Molson or their Labatt's in a bowling alley or sitting in their ice fishing hut. That's their safe space, by the way. They're all running there now for the rest of the winter. And they'll sit there and they'll sing, but the Bears still suck. That's an actual song they sing as a fan base.
Right. Yes.
So listen, if you're upset by Green Bay sucks chants on Amazon after the game is over, and you have a song that you sing, even if you lose a game to any team, your fan base gets together, just like Go Cubs Go, right? Which is really a Budweiser commercial and still the stupidest thing in the world for me as a White Sox fan, the Go Cubs Go song. I hate it. And it's just so dumb because it was just a Budweiser commercial. And now it's become like a thing, you know? Just like that's annoying to me. Like, think about it this way. You lose a game to anybody and you sing, but the Bears still suck. In chorus form. There was video after they had lost a wild card game and been eliminated of Packers fans singing that song in a bar up in Wisconsin. I don't think you have a leg to stand on because you don't like the fact that somebody talked trash about your team. That's rivalry. Yeah, that's what I love.
Just because our quarterback went all Salt Bay with a bunch of grated cheese. And you know, I did actually see one Packers fan I ran across, you know, as I'm scrolling through trying to occupy my mind. I did see one Packers fan come up that said that for the first time in his life, he's actually jealous of the head coach of the Bears because he wants Ben Johnson's energy. Like, he wants that rivalry.
The Bears have a better coach and the Bears have a better quarterback. Their defense is terrible. Yeah. But the Bears have a better coach, and the Bears have the better quarterback. I believe that.
And as a Bears coach and quarterback, like, I want them to be invested in the rivalry. I want that for my sports teams. I don't necessarily want them to sit there and be like, well, you know, as long as everybody plays the game the right way.
That's what I miss about the White Sox being good. That's why it stinks. That's one of the things I miss about the White Sox is the lack of rivalry. Because when the White Sox are good and they're in a rivalry, I mean, it's fun, even though sometimes we take the brunt of it. Like, I've talked about this on the show before, the White Sox and Twins rivalry of the very end of the 90s, but really in the 2000s, where the Sox are in the early 2000s, in that first decade of the 2000s, where the Sox are constantly coming up short against the Twins, where
The Piranhas.
yes, and there's a play at the plate at one point with Torrey Hunter where he barrels over one of our guys, or Michael Kadire. I can't remember which one it was. And it was like
It was Torrey Hunter barreling over Jamie Burke.
right, exactly. But then later on, when I think even in 05, but it might have been later on. Oh, and you also have that moment in the 08 game 163 where I think Kadire comes down the line or something like that and runs into Przinsky, and Przinsky hangs on to the ball this time and gets him at the plate. And that it's a rivalry because they knew that time we finally got them back for something that happened years earlier, and we knew that was a pivotal moment in the White Sox Twins rivalry. Right? Like my dearly departed, and he just died in the last year, one of my best friends in the whole world, my dearly departed friend, Joe Signorelli, who grew up in Edina, Minnesota. We went to college together. He's godfather to my daughter, Audrey, my firstborn. We used to, I still, all year long since he's passed away, every once in a while I'll start writing him a text. And then I'm like, oh, wait, he's not going to answer that. Because during Sox Twins games, we've talked so much crap back and forth to each other. And so I have his perspective as a Twins fan. And during that period of time, they think they lost in that rivalry. Like, we as White Sox fans are like, look at all those division championships they got. Look at all the times that they embarrassed us. Look at all the times they hurt us. But we got a World Series in 05. So he and all of his friends feel like they lost in that decade to us. They lost game 163 and we won a World Series, even though it always felt like we were losing to them. That's the beauty of interdivisional rivalry in sports.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's kind of like, why are we fans? Why do we do this? Why do we get passionate about it? Why do we get all whipped up about these things? It's because we want to have something to hold on to, right? Psychologically, you want that feeling to hold on to. And when you have a rival, okay, when you finally beat somebody that you hate, okay, I mean hate, that visceral reaction that you have to seeing the uniform, it just feels so much better. Like, tell me game 163, if it goes down exactly as it went down, but it is against the Seattle Mariners.
Not as cool.
Not as cool.
Not the same thing.
As cool.
In fact, that was the only team that decade that it would have been cool against. It would not have been the same against Cleveland. It would not have been the same against Kansas City. Yes, they're rivals. But so much had built up between the Sox and the Twins during that entire decade. That was and you know what? And the Twins got screwed in it, right? Like, they changed the rules afterwards. The Twins had won the season series against the White Sox, but because of a coin flip, it got to be a home game for us, right? We backed into that. Yeah. We had a terrible last week, and yet they somehow had a worse last week, and we backed into that game. Like, nothing made sense in that game at all. Even us having it at home, everything about that game was silly, and yet we found a way to win it. And then we weren't that good of a team. That's why we got beat right away in the postseason, right? Like that. Oh yeah, it's not that team couldn't hold a candle to the team that had gone out there and won the World Series 3 years earlier. That team, I remember when that team won game 163, I had no expectations of them going through the postseason or going very deep in it. I felt like they were going to lose that first series, which they did. So everything about that season and that memory, and the reason I went out and bought tickets and made sure I was there for it, was because it was the Twins. Like, in the 90s, the rivalry wasn't as much the Twins. There was a point where it kind of was. I remember I went to a 4-game series in Minneapolis with my dad, my mom, my sister, and myself. We did 4 games in Minneapolis and watched the Twins walk off twice in those 4 games in like a June series. And game 4 was they gave away baseballs, which is a terrible decision when you have a rivalry game, because all the White Sox fans threw the action. These weren't foam baseballs. It was real baseballs.
Like league balls, yeah.
Yeah, league balls being fired onto the field after Shane Mack hit a walk-off home run against the White Sox. I mean, like, it was... And I remember thinking to myself, what was I at that age? God, I got to be like 16, 17 years old. It's like 90s. Early 90s, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Oh, gosh, I grabbed the ball and I reared back to fire it from the upper deck, and my father grabbed my arm and told me he would break it if I threw that thing. Because he was like, you can't throw a baseball from the second deck. Meanwhile, every other White Sox fan around me is firing their baseballs. And I'm like, everybody else is doing it. He goes, they're idiots. Somebody's going to get killed. And in reality, that's true. But that was rivalry. That entire garbage dome with the cement floor was filled with baseballs from angry White Sox fans who had traveled up there for the weekend. The rivalry between the White Sox and the Cleveland Indians at the time, when they were good and we were good. I mean, it was even made more fierce when we got Albert Bell, because earlier on that decade, they were really good. We were up against them. That stuff is great. You know, the rivalries are just the most fun thing about baseball or any sport. That's what I kind of miss right now because we're not competitive. I feel like this group, though, this White Sox team, this group of players, these young guys, this may be the year where you see them do something out on the field. You might see a little bit of trash talk. You might see a little bit more intensity. I think young teams on the come up, they're the ones that spark rivalries that used to be rivalries. That's what the Bears are right now, right? They're a young team on the come up. It's got a really good quarterback, a really good head coach that wants to change the attitude and get better. This is very much what the White Sox are. Here's a team that intends to improve, intends to get better. I would be surprised if we don't have a moment during the 2026 season where there's beanballs back and forth at one point with one of the divisional teams, trash talk, a collision, something I think happens because a young team trying to assert themselves as no longer the doormat, which I think is what this team will be trying to do. I don't know if they'll be successful or not. That's how those things get started again. For those of you looking to switch to a new age of life, keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Look no further than Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. Hyatt's going to work with your insurance. They have 0% financing for qualified individuals. If you use a CPAP machine and you are unhappy with your vendor, switch now. Get supplies directly mailed to you. They also have testing rooms in their showroom. You can go in there and just kind of try out the equipment. I don't think that's an option anywhere else. And you were talking about something you're going to go to bed and sleep with and rely upon, and you want to make sure it works right. Look towards Hyatt. Learn everything about Hyatt Home Medical Equipment and what they can do for you at hhme.com. Your take on that, though, I think you may see the same kind of thing happen on the south side at some degree.
Yeah, well, and it's happened. It rotates around the teams because I remember distinctly White Sox in the earlier part of the 2000s before the, with the Twins rivalry. But I think it was the 2000 season itself. They get into that massive brawl with the Tigers. Right?
Oh, that was the best.
Tigers.
Yeah,
the Tigers. Yeah. The Tigers were hated. I hated the Tigers after that.
Even though Terry Boom Boom Bevington was really kind of an ass throughout that entire thing, and probably was the cause for some unnecessary fighting.
Yes.
Boom Boom was kind of a problem, right? He was a bad manager who just liked to fight.
I'm not sure we were on the right side of the start of that.
No, I don't think we were. I don't care. I still hated the Tigers, but we may have been the problem in that one.
It's the only reason why I remember the name Robert Fick.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only reason why I remember some of those guys. And it's one of those where the question I think is going to become which team in the division is going to have the arrogance to start something with a young White Sox team or do something that say something or act a certain way towards this team where the guys get together and decide, oh, we've had enough of these guys.
Yeah.
And even if the Sox started or the other team starts, it doesn't matter. But that's where the rivalry begins. Because
we almost had one going with the Guardians there for a short time. When our last rebuild ended and we thought we were good, there was a lot of back and forth. Remember, they were doing the White Sox after they won a division. Remember, they were on camera saying it into the cameras. They were taking pictures while they were so proud they won that division. There was a lot of talk back and forth between those two teams. The problem is we weren't good enough to be able to make it into a rivalry. We just got our butts kicked and went away.
And Tim Anderson squaring off against Jose Ramirez and immediately getting decked.
Like we lost at every level.
Not helpful. Yeah.
We lost at every level of that rivalry. Nothing good came out of that. We looked terrible. If anything, that was I think of all the White Sox rivalries in my lifetime, the very short-lived White Sox Guardians rivalry that has them winning the division and Tim Anderson getting clocked. Like we did not win anything in that rivalry. That was an embarrassing one.
No, that one we could sweep that one under the rug and forget that one ever.
And you know what though? But if they look at it, if a Cleveland fan looks at it, that's them finally getting back to us or back at us for beating them in 2005 when they thought they were going to come back and win that thing. and being defiant.
Right.
And we were defiant in the press that we were not going to give that up to them. Right? That's Joe Creedy when you're only up by a game and they think they're going to beat you in Chicago and take the lead in that division, which the White Sox had wire to wire. And that's Joe Creedy coming up hitting a home run. And Hawk almost falling out of the booth. He's so excited. Yelling, Joe Creedy! He almost had a heart attack right there on the call. Think of how disgusting that was for them. So that's the beauty of rivalry. I want this. And I think I'm going to enjoy this Bears-Packers one because we're going to win more than they win. Because our coach is better and our quarterback's better. And now I want to see that kind of thing from the Chicago White Sox. That's what I want to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see it. It's and it happens. I remember when they realigned the NHL so that the Hawks and Red Wings were no longer in the same division. It was
terrible decision.
Wow, oh my God,
Awful
you're killing a massive rivalry.
Well, remember the Sox had a rivalry with the Brewers.
They did.
That was a real thing. Sox Brewers was a real rivalry. And they basically stole that away and gave it to the Cubs. They took our rivalry and gave it to the North Side. Another thing.
And let's face it.
Another thing I don't like about the Cubs.
Yeah, and the Cubs,
trying to interrupt the Bears game with their Alex Bregman signing. Right?
I know. What glom on to somebody else's heat much there, Cubbies?
What a needy organization to announce that in the middle of a Bears-Packers playoff game that was the whole city's watching. Oh, by the way, in the middle of this game, we just want to let you know we signed Alex Bregman to a $175 million deal, which I think is going to be a mistake. I mean, right after that happened.
Yeah, actually.
CBS Sports put out a great article, and I only saw it because it was in my fantasy baseball feed, and I was looking up stuff for getting ready for my fantasy baseball season, basically saying that this was a terrible decision by Bregman because he hits everything down the left field line, and he's a pull hitter for his home runs. And now all of a sudden, the wall down that line is going to be 40 to 50 feet longer than what he normally deals with when he plays in Wrigley. And for what he does... And they put a spray chart over the last two stadiums he's been in, and then they put one over Wrigley. Things are going to change for him. And I want to say it was Isaac Paredes played for the Cubs for about 50, 60 games. And he saw this massive dip in his offensive output. And the moment he leaves the Cubs, he goes back to what he used to be because he's the same kind of hitter. And anecdotally, I sent that article to my 18-year-old nephew, Connor, and who went to that Bears game, and we have been chatting about him. Oh, by the way, did you see what they said about Bregman? Because he's a big Cubs fan. And his response back, he hadn't even read the article yet. He was like, yeah, it reminds me of Isaac Paredes. I don't know if every Cubs fan is convinced that's money well spent. It's exciting they got him. I'd love for us to sign somebody for that kind of money, but it might not be the right guy for that field.
No, not at all. And yeah, it is Paredes who... with the 2024 Tampa Bay Rays for the first half of the season, 101 games, hit 16 home runs, was hitting 245 with a 792 OPS. Comes to the Cubs for 52 games. The OPS drops to 633, and he only musters 3 home runs with 6 doubles.
Because he hits everything down the line. That's what Bregman does. Bregman hits everything down the line. You just gave him one of the longest lines in baseball to hit down.
And then Paredes goes to Houston, Bregman's all-star stomping grounds, and turns back into a guy who hits 254 with an 809 OPS and hits the 20 home run plateau again. So, Alex Bregman, welcome to hopefully getting a few doubles down the line and a few in the gap in Wrigley Field. You are officially Yoan Moncada now. Congratulations.
I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, it really is. And, somebody might say you're just rooting for the Cubs to fail. And that's true. I am, because I'm a White Sox fan, and I don't root for both teams. I just root for one. And the other one is the Packers to me. Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money. Give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. I want to get to this list here. Hot Stove, MLB Network, put out an Instagram, and it's all-time White Sox lineup. And you read it.
I always love these. I love these because there's always some what some moment in there where you're sitting there going like, wait, we're now
I want to know.
really
I
no.
want to know who they consult for these things. And does that person just? Why doesn't that person at least bring up like the retired numbers of that franchise? If you're not familiar with the team, let's say that they had an intern make this list for content. The first thing that person should have done was just Google retired White Sox numbers and make sure that they have a justification for putting somebody into a position that's not got a retired number or is not a Hall of Famer even over a Hall of Famer with their number retired on the team. Like catcher, I makes sense. Carlton Fisk. Now spent half of his career with the Red Sox, but spent a large portion of his career with the White Sox, was very successful with them, and there was a debate over what hat he should wear going in.
I actually think he was with the White Sox longer than he was with the Red Sox.
Exactly. Frank Thomas, of course, the best first baseman the White Sox have had, and he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest hitters ever, and he's the greatest hitter I ever saw in person in my life. Second base, Julio Cruz.
No. Look, all different. Julio Cruz. I have nothing wrong with Julio Cruz.
Julio Cruz. Julio Cruz.
Not even close.
All-time best second baseman in White Sox history. Julio Cruz.
No.
No. Who would you pick there? Nelly Fox? Did they forget about Nelly Fox?
I think they forgot about Nelly Fox. I think they forgot. I think you forgot.
Tadahito Iguchi, at least we won a World Series with him there, and he had a great season that year. I would put Tadahito Iguchi over Julio Cruz, and I was alive for Julio Cruz for all the old guys out there like me.
I know. That's the thing is, I remember Julio.
I'd say Ray
Cruz
Durham
playing.
is better than Julio Cruz.
Ray Durham is
better than Julio Cruz. I'm just saying, I don't understand that at all. Shortstop Ozzie Guillen, again, he could be the manager because he won a World Series, but he is not the best shortstop when you have Louis Aparicio and Luke Appling as shortstops in your franchise.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's one of those like, yes, I get it. Recency bias. Ozzie was the team shortstop from, in the 80s. He ends up coming back as the manager, wins the World Series. He belongs like in the pantheon of like all-time White Sox greats.
Number should be retired.
100%.
Right? His number should be retired for the combination of what he did for the White Sox. Bar none, 100%. It's a travesty it's not. And shame on Jerry Reinsdorf for whatever reason that it hasn't been retired. He won them a World Series as a manager. Okay? After an 88-year drought. And he won it for that owner. And I don't know about the behind-the-scenes stuff and all that crap and whatever's causing it to not happen. But there are statues for guys that don't deserve statues you can make arguments for. And there's numbers retired that don't make sense. And I'm sorry. He should be retired. I find him to be one of the biggest travesties that the White Sox, that they have not retired Ozzie Guillen. And I'll take that back. I do agree with all the numbers that have been retired. I do. I'm just trying to make the point that I'm kind of put off by the fact that Ozzie's not on that list. Now, knowing that I feel that way about Ozzie not having his number retired, he's not the all-time shortstop for the White Sox.
No, he is not. I mean, look, his defense was fantastic. He was a constant presence. He also was a lifetime 626 OPS. He really couldn't hit. In fact, when he was the manager of the White Sox and the Twins were our rival, bringing that back to that, he used to laugh because every manager in the division, in his estimation, was a horse bleep hitter when they were, on their playing career. And he used to make fun of Ron Gardenhire because Gardenhire couldn't hit at all when he was a player. So, and as he said, neither could I. So, there's a guy admitting like, yeah, he was here as a defensive guy. He was the 9th place hitter for 12 years for a reason, though. Like, that's not the all-time greatest shortstop. For God's sakes, Luke Appling hit a home run when he was in an old-timers game at like age 75 or something like that.
Third base is Robin Ventura. I don't think it's a bad pick. I mean, Joe Crede had one of the greatest seasons ever, and I thought should have been the MVP of the World Series, but Robin's probably better. Bill Melton was a hell of a player, but Robin's probably better. Buck Weaver, we all know that way back in the day with Shula's Joe, he was a pretty good player, but Robin's probably better. I'm not going to argue about that one. I'm not going to get upset about it like I did with Julio Cruz. Minnie Minoso's in the outfield with Shula's Joe Jackson and Harold Baines, and they clear room at the DH spot so Jim Thome can be on the list. And I take umbrage with that as well. Now, hear me out on this. Jim Thome's a great baseball player. Jim Thome's a nice guy. Jim Thome's within the White Sox organization right now, and Jim Thome is a hometown player. Jim Thome also only spent 3.5 of his 22-year career with the Chicago White Sox. And that's why I would not put him on an all-time White Sox list. I'm always confused when I meet a White Sox fan who thinks that he was part of the '05 team and they exist out there. And I'm always confused as to why he's considered to be an all-time great White Sox player when he played for 3.5 seasons. He's an Indians player before they were called the Guardians. That's what he is. That's what Jim Thome's career is. That's when he does all of his great stuff. Like in my mind, I'm still annoyed that the White Sox gave up on Frank Thomas, and I had to watch him hit all of his milestones at the end of his career with Toronto and with Oakland, while I had to watch Jim Thome hit all of his milestones with the White Sox. Because to me, I would have much rather seen Big Hurt do it and spend his entire career. And it didn't benefit you that much. I mean, when you change that team over and Aaron Rowan leaves so you can get Jim Thome, and you make the adjustments that you make, you changed a little bit too much. Javier Vasquez was also a problem there in getting rid of El Duque. But there were too many little changes that were made where you fall short, I think, by a game or two in '06, and then it never recovers afterwards because of the infighting and everything that was going wrong within the organization. It's a real disappointment. I have nothing against Jim Thome, but I just don't know how you can call this. If he's an all-time White Sox player, do I get to put Ken Griffey Jr. out there, or Robbie Alomar Jr., or Sandy Alomar Jr., I mean, like, what? Do I just get to pick a bunch of players that, like, stopped by at some point? And just throw him out. Tom Seaver. Does he get to be an all-time White Sox pitcher?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's because the White Sox have this litany of guys that were all-time greats that spent, a year or two here. And Jim Thome kind of falls into that. I mean, as much as he is a local guy and an ambassador for the White Sox now and a fan favorite, I have nothing against Jim Thome. But if they had never made that trade, if Aaron Rowan had spent 2006 patrolling center field for the White Sox, and there would have been probably a different outcome, because really, essentially, like you said, Jim Thome replaced Frank Thomas or Carl Everett, right? I mean, that's what he ends up doing. And it's not
on that list, but in that time period when he came in there.
But in that time period.
Yeah.
And so to your point about Jim Thome even being one of the all-time greats, other than 2008, when he's already on the downswing in his career, and him hitting the solo home run in game 163, really, there's nothing that he did as a member of the White Sox that you sit there and you go, oh God, this is what makes him the all-time great. Like you said, to the point of Tadahito Iguchi as the second baseman over Julio Cruz. Tadahito Iguchi was instrumental in winning a World Series for the first time in 88 years. Even though he only played for the Sox for a few seasons, he still had a greater impact. And again, I love Jim Thome, but yeah, he wasn't here in '05.
Like, here's the thing. I would have a hard time saying Dick Allen was a White Sox great. I mean, I know that we all talk about him in those 3 years that he was with the team, but he was with the Phillies the majority of the time. Greg Luzinski was with the Phillies also for a long period of time, remember? And then he has 4 years with the Sox at the end of his career, 81 through 84.
And he gets MVP votes in 2 of them.
He gets MVP votes in 2 of them. Thome only gets 1 of those 3 seasons where he gets MVP votes with the Sox. But would you say that Greg Luzinski would be considered to be an all-time White Sox player, or is he a Phillies player? He had 15 years in the majors. He spent 11 of them with Philadelphia. Again, I mean, like, I think Jim Thome's a good baseball player. And if you went out and bought a Jim Thome jersey, good for you. He was awesome. And he was a good player while he was with us. But I always find it really weird when he's put on all these all-time White Sox player lists when he isn't. His career is defined by his time with Cleveland. And he actually spent just as much time with Philadelphia as he did with the White Sox. Like, it's very odd to me. It always just kind of surprises me a little bit. Whenever I see a list that he's thrown on there, is it as upsetting to me as Julio Cruz is the best second baseman in White Sox history? No, that's more upsetting. That's more upsetting. When we walk out of the studio and I tell my father that Nellie Fox didn't make that list and Julio Cruz did, he'll be very upset.
Yes. Yeah, those are fighting words right there.
Sox in the basement. Socks in the basement. Socks in the basement.
Socks in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on socksinthebasement.com.